All right. So, let's give you all a cool elbow bump here to say hello, and we'll jump right into the presentation here. So before I get started, this is kind of a customary thing that I wanted to start doing at the PDs whenever I'm able to, and a colleague at CSUB kind of got me on this, and so this is a wanted to acknowledge the land we're on, or at least the land that I'm on. I don't know where you are, but in the Antelope Valley, we pursue life, work, education in the traditional lands of these peoples that I've highlighted here, and just want to acknowledge them as the original inhabitants of this region, past, present, and emerging. And it's customary to do. Oh, that's great to hear, Yvonne. I love that. So yeah, it's customary to when doing one of these things to give the audience a resource, and so I wanted to give you nativeland.ca. It's a Canadian website that if you click on it, you can type in the name of the town you're from, or any town, and it'll give you this color-coded map of where they think people lived in throughout history, which is kind of cool. And then there's resources to original inhabitants. So yeah, thank you. And so there you have it. And those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Just wanted to start us off this morning by acknowledging the land that, from at least where I am, some of you may be all over the country right now, which is great. You can get professional development no matter where you are while you're on summer vacation. I love that, right? And so make sure you say hello in the chat, and to serve as a extra layer of signing in, so we can document that you're here, get you paid, right? So here's the kind of what I wanted to do. One more thing. So elbow bumps, right? It's kind of a goofy way an awkward way to say hello during the pandemic, so you don't mix germs, you socially distance, and kind of poking fun at that, but I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge also that I'm not taking any of the pandemic lightly, and I don't want to give that impression, right? I personally have lost 3 people to COVID in the past year. One to substance abuse because of problems that happened during COVID, and someone else took their life that I know because of all these problems. And so, and I don't mean to bum us out or anything like that, but I just want to acknowledge that these are terrible times, right? And what I'm going to be doing in this PD is kind of looking back with a bit of optimism, but I still wanted to acknowledge the pain and suffering that we've all experienced over the past year. So I wanted to respect that. But I also wanted to look back at some of the silver linings that we can take and move forward with. And so that's what this PD is all about, looking at some of the things that worked pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and how can we take those and move forward with whatever school's going to look like next year, because we don't know, right? So, all right. Who doesn't love a good trilogy? This is kind of in my head, right? This is sort of part 3 in a 3 part series that I didn't know was going to be a series, but back in January, we took a look back at the hits from 2020, so things that worked, and kind of gave some ideas there. Then when we kind of jumped into simultaneous instruction, where we had students in person and online at the same time, and we had to, kind of looked at some strategies to help address that, right? And and now we're gonna sort of do the same thing, but I didn't want to just repeat, things from there. So hopefully I'll give you a few new things. We'll highlight we'll spend some time on some of the newer things, and then you know, I'll also give you a few things to look back on. So on this slide, right, and I'll post a link to it again in the chat, as a few people have joined us again. And you can access all the resources and video recordings of those PDs here for your viewing pleasure. And if you watch them on YouTube, in the description, they're time-stamped, so you can skip to the relevant parts. So you don't have to watch the full hour PD. And I'll do the same thing with this one once it's over. All right. So there's that. And now here's part 3, right? And here's our objective for part 3. Essentially, just like what I already told you, we're going to look back at some of the things that have worked and look forward. And the main goal, I know I got it if, the success criteria for you is if you can get some stuff that you can use next year or into summer school, we'll call that success. All right. Here's our agenda, 5 things. So I want to look at 5 categories, rebuilding educator and student agency as we move forward. Look at some ideas for routines and procedures. I'm going to show you how to clone yourself with not giving up any DNA. At least you don't have to, but you can, I guess. Look at a little bit of inclusivity techniques, and we're going to take a reassessment of our assessments as we to wrap things up. Okay, and we're here for an hour and a half, right? 90-minute PD here. So, all right. First thing is rebuilding educator and student agency here. And so what I wanted to do with that is first make another acknowledgement here. You know, remember going on airplanes, right? That was a thing we used to do, right? And the rule was, right, you would put the face mask on yourself, the oxygen mask on yourself, so that you can then put it on somebody who needs it, right? Who can't help themselves. So take care of yourself first, so you can take care of others. You know, you've probably heard that a lot with in education circles. But the reason I want to bring this to your attention here is the idea of burnout. And a lot of people, you know, myself included, have felt burnt out at some point, right? This year is no exception. And these researchers kind of pointed this out. When we don't experience the link between our efforts and the impact that they have, our efficacy or our sense of being able to deal effectively with a task, and our agency, which is our ability to engage in effort to reach a goal, both of those are reduced. So it's not about the amount of hours that we put into something, it's about not seeing the effect of it. And we could probably all relate to that this year, right? Talking into a screen and maybe not getting any reactions, you know, like some of the jokes you probably told you know, like your entire career, you know, perfect execution and silence, and maybe they're laughing at home, I don't, you know. And so that is what drives burnout. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to start with something positive. All right. All right, so I'm gonna throw you into breakout rooms, into little partner groups, and the person whose name starts alphabetically first, you're going to go first. All right. So some of you are going to be in groups of 3. That's okay. All right. So it'll be groups of 3 for 2 minutes. I want you to answer one of these 2 questions, either one or both if you have time. So what new unexpected learning opportunities did you experience during the past year and a half? So something you didn't expect to learn. Or the other question is, what unexpected learning opportunities did students have for learning outside of the curriculum that you were able to witness or hear about. Okay, so 2 questions to share there. You don't have to turn your camera on. You can just unmute and talk if you want, but hopefully at least one of the 3 people in your group will be able to do that. So we're going to do a 2-minute turn and talk here really quick, okay? All right, there you go.
My group, actually, I talked about my own virtual strategies that I've never had before. It's all virtual. The other teacher, Eric from our school, a great teacher, he said about the new technology and technical aspects that he learned. And also Jenny from another school, and as a friend, she also talked about the idea that she helped new techniques of helping others, students and teachers.
Oh, cool. All right, so some education-related new learning, so job-embedded ones. So yes. Great, thank you for sharing, Dr. Nafi.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so so just to start off on a positive note, you know, the term learning loss, you know, like as teachers, we all hate that term, I'm sure, but there were lots of opportunities for students to learn, and there will continue to be opportunities to learn even outside of the curriculum, right? Like kids may have learned to bake, or you know, something like just the technical things like running Zoom and Meet and things like that, right? So, all right, so we'll start with that, and then we'll move into how about the students. So hopefully we got to reflect a little bit on your own new learning, right? And let's talk about students, and two aspects here: self-regulation and reestablishing a relationship to learning. And so the next few things will be about that, about rebuilding the relationship to learning and self-regulating. And so here's one cool tool I ran across. So Lisa Johnson wrote this book, Creatively Productive, and she gave these trackers, and so or digital trackers. And so I'll give you an opportunity to explore these a little bit, but I wanted to kind of just show you the first one. All right, and so the idea here is that you give students the spreadsheet, and they keep track of their own mood, right? So they can say happy, sad, depressed, tired, you know, the number of hours they slept, like, well, let's say 5, how many ounces of water they drank, let's say 8, let's go 10, I don't know, minutes exercising, let's say 20, and whether or not they listen to music. And so if you notice, it's kind of color coded. So if it's red, it means that it's probably less than you should be doing. And I forget what she did. All right, yeah. And then, you know, green means, oh, that's a more healthy, you know, way of, or amount of time or something like that. And then so it's just programmed this already, and so it's ready to go. You can maybe change ounces of water to something else, but this isn't like a way to get students to, you know, to pry into their lives, but it is a way for them to pry into their own lives, to kind of self-assess and self-regulate, right? And so you might consider giving students a time at the beginning of class or at the end of class to kind of reassess how the day's going, and then kind of reset them moving forward. And she's got a bunch of these different types of trackers, and I'll give you a few moments in just a little bit to explore some of these, right? So there's all of these, and then this other journaling specialist here created this mood. It's the exact same thing, but it's tactile, right? So you would start with number 1 and go through. There's a pie piece for each month, and you can color code, you know, 4 different colors or 8 different colors, and students just color their mood. So maybe blue up here means, you know, things are going well, and red means today I was a little sad, you know, and so they can kind of keep track of their mood by coloring, and that sort of helps um, ease you a little bit, right, and soothe you a little bit. If you've ever done any of the adult coloring books, right, there's something very soothing about just spending some time filling in color, right, in a shape. So there's this. I'm going to show you one more thing. The folks at UC San Francisco, I believe that was right, put together this website for their students. It's actually a student put together by students for students, and it's sort of run through the school by students. And so the idea here, it's GritX is the name of the website, and I can just preview this for you really quick, and I'll give you some time to explore it too. But what you can do is, depending on how you're feeling, right? You know, students can click on, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious today. So what are some ways to help with that? And so there's all these different self-care resources, and then you can click on them, and they kind of go over how to do the thing. And again, this is not a part of any curriculum, right? But it can help students get centered and then, you know, really get engaged in the curriculum. And one of the things that I think we have to look forward to is not jumping right into curriculum right away when students come back. If we come back, you know, in any sense of what used to be normal, there's some social emotional learning that has to take place, re-socializing that needs to take place, and hopefully these are some resources that you can use for that. So I wanted to give you some time to explore some of these. I'm going to throw you back into groups. We'll use the same no, I think I'll shuffle the groups, and you know, you can explore together or kind of look at it on your own. So I'll leave it up to you in the groups. We'll do 5 minutes for this, and then we'll do a quick report out right after, okay? All right, well, welcome back. 2 things I asked you to look at were the spreadsheets, the different mood trackers, and GritX. And so can I get one person to share out just what is one way that you think you can use this in the classroom moving forward? You know, just for the good of the room here. Hey.
Continuing that Wellness Wednesday idea next year, and I always do kind of a check-in with students, whether it's like using a spinner with emojis or that wellness tracker, just having them like take a minute to just track how they're feeling, how they've exercised or slept throughout the week. I think those are really good and really important. I mean, you could probably even do it daily. They might get annoyed with that, but I also do, you know, where we do a gratitude list and then we play a gratitude game. I do that maybe once or twice a month, and I've always done that, but I definitely think that we're going to need to do a whole lot more of that kind of stuff coming up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, no, that's great, and it's just a really good point I was going to make later, but just since you brought it up, the you know, when we look back at like, ooh, what worked from the past year and a half, and there was a big emphasis on social emotional learning and making sure the kids are okay. And you know, I was just thinking like, why hasn't that always been a thing, you know? And so you know, I'm glad that is a focus now, and hopefully it will continue to be moving forward. So Paloma has her hand up. Do you want to share something?
Yeah, so like at first I was looking at these, I'm like, what can I do with this, or how can I incorporate it? And I thought to myself, you know, and in my group we were talking about, okay, so we get this data and then what? Like what's the follow through? And so I thought maybe, you know, we can take little screenshots of these, add them into a Google form. And I love the Wellness Wednesday. I'm gonna have to steal that title. So like, you know, maybe that's a Google form. And then on Wednesdays, they have to click, you know, which tracker best relates to them. And then that's information that I can then share with their counselor, and just, you know, with a simple email, like, hey, can you follow up? You know, especially, you know, at times we can get overwhelmed with our workload as it is. But if we have this evidence that we can share with somebody, a counselor, another teacher that the student has a connection with. I mean, it's just that extra layer of trying to, you know, get these kids help.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. You know, and gathering data on students, not just academic data, but emotional and just general well-being data is you know, can be helpful. It can also be helpful, I think, you know, on the flip side, not even collecting it at all, just letting the students gather their own data and letting them see how they're doing and track themselves. So yeah, great, cool. I hope these are helpful, and if you do end up using them, please feel free to, you know, email me or you know, contact me and let me know how you're using them. I always love hearing.
The website
Oh,
has a lot of stuff too. It's pretty cool.
yeah,
The
yeah,
resource. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. So cool. Hope that's you found that helpful. All right. So speaking of having students sort of manage themselves and self-regulate. I've shared this in the past, but just in case, I'll link it here in the presentation. But if you go to if you click on that picture, it'll take you to a other presentation that's ready to go, and you can give to students if you want on. And it's a quick tutorial on how to build a SMART goal. And I've seen a few teachers do this at the beginning of the year, where students put together a SMART goal, either related to class or to, you know, something personal, and then they track it throughout the year, right? One particular teacher, this is an elementary school teacher, one of my kids' teachers actually, had the students come up with a SMART goal, and this was a few years ago. And then at back to school night, she had all these Chromebooks set up at the student's desk with a flip grid ready, and the students recorded themselves explaining what their goal for the you know, the semester was going to be, and then there were directions on for the parents to record a encouragement message to the students, like, oh, that's a great goal, you know. And she even had little scripts, you know, like, in case you don't know what to say, here's something, you know. And then with some of our other, some of the other students whose parents weren't there, you know, I went and, you know, I just asked her, you know, hey, what do you do with that? And she said that she recorded, you know, messages, encouraging messages for them as they move along their goals. And so the way this presentation works is each slide represents one aspect of a SMART goal, and it gives a definition. A bad example, a good example, and then in the red box, a space for the student to draft their SMART goal. And if it doesn't quite, like if it meets all the criteria, but maybe it's not realistic, they can go to the R slide and kind of figure out what you know, how to make it realistic. So they don't have to go through every letter necessarily, right? So there's that, and it's ready to go, and feel free to take, steal, adjust, and if you adjust it, let me know how you improved it, so that then I can share it widely also. All right. Okay. Here's another thing I'd put together. This is for some of our teachers who had come back during the this little cohort of students during like the first phase of coming back to school, and you know, and so the idea, if you click on the image, it'll take you to a published Google Slides. So it's kind of like a website, and it tells you click anywhere to get started. You can click, and then there's these little sticky notes, and each of the sticky notes represents a or is a link to something. So maybe the students don't know how to check their grades on PowerSchool, so they can click there, and it'll take them to this this page where, you know, there's a 1-minute video on how to access PowerSchool. And then there's this make a checklist thing, so you can click on the link up there, and it'll be a force copy to a thing like this, where you can check your grades and write down what your missing assignments are. So again, another way to self-regulate. And then this might be outdated now, but I'll replace it when we come back next year. But it's a link to a spreadsheet on how to access each counselor at each school. This was a great resource that the student services folks put together, and so hopefully that'll be something that we keep having, right, for our students. So there's that. Throw in this great article I came across on Edutopia. This really helps me. This is how I rationalize all the Star Wars stuff I spend money on. You know, I know a large chunk of that went into developing Edutopia, and so it's okay. Helps me sleep at night. Speaking of things that our district has put together, the virtual calming room that Yvonne put in, that was linked also in that other, in the previous slide, but then also the counselors had put together these ready to go lessons on the Habitude units, right? And if you're not familiar with those, they're kind of like these metaphors that are meant to be sort of a self-motivating or a self-regulating social emotional leadership training, right? And so anyway, so there's that, and it's the great part about this is that it's ready to go. You could take one of their lessons and just run like exactly with what's there, just use that. And so you know, that's there for you to use. And this is a reminder to myself. So so Shannon, Dr. Nafi, and Paloma all shared, and so I wanted to thank you for sharing with the official Antelope Valley Teacher Induction coloring book. So I'll send it to your site. So you email me where you'll be, and I'll send you a coloring book with official AVTI color pencils. Yeah, so got to get the merch out there, right? So congratulations and thank you for sharing. All right. Okay, so you know, at this point you're like, wait, I didn't know this was going to be a social emotional learning PD, and I think we spent a lot of time on that, but I think it's important. I think it's an important thing for moving forward beyond the elbow bumps, right? It's something that should stick around. So don't want to spend too much more time on this, but I did want to give you a list of other resources that are available to you, and link them here. The ones in the red I've shared before at those previous PDs. So if you've attended one of them, you know, it might jog your memory, or if you haven't, they're linked here. You can look at them. And the new one though is this California Department of Education SEL resources website, and it has a lot of different things to varying levels of usefulness, I think. But there are some very useful things, including some webinars that have been recorded and some that are upcoming, based solely on social and emotional learning, run through the people who came up with the CASEL standards, or the SEL standards, right, for California. And so there is that. All right. All right. So number 2. So that was the first thing, was educator and student agency. And now we're going to look at routines and procedures. I mean, one way we could think of routines and procedures, they're like the train tracks. So if our curriculum is a train, the tracks on which they run are routines and procedures. And I heard somebody explain it that way once, and it just like blew my mind. And you can't get any of the curriculum down, or it'll be very difficult to get get the curriculum in without routines and without procedures. And routines, I kind of are sort of like rituals. It's something I've started thinking about. And as human beings, we assign rituals to things that we value, right? Like weddings, graduations. There's lots of rituals that go along with these activities that we place value in, right? And so I remember reading an article about a teacher who was thinking back on his teacher, right? And his like 4th grade teacher would have story time, where they'd get on the carpet, but she had this whole ritual thing where she would light these candles, have the students light the candles, like, I can't even imagine getting away with that now, but they would, all light candles and sit and listen to the story with a candle in their hand. And then, she'd tell the story, and then when they were done, they would all blow out the candles together, and she would say something like, "Oh, these are your wishes going up into the universe." So kind of silly, but kind of cute. And but there was this whole ritual behind story time, right? And and that's in a 4th grade class. But then in secondary, these rituals kind of become a little bit more procedural, but we can assign value to these things. So here's some ideas on maybe not rituals, but routines and procedures, right? I'll play this quick video. We're going to skip to the center of it. It's just a funny flight attendant, right? But think about what the flight attendants do every flight, right? They go through all of the routines, right? They show you how to click the seat belt, how to put on the mask. They go through all the things. They demonstrate. And if your seatbelt is not on and your seat is not upright, and we don't take off, like nothing happens, right? And so they have these routines that are in place, and these expectations. And so one of the metaphors I've heard here on routines and procedures is be like a flight attendant, right? Harness your inner flight attendant when establishing procedures. So I wanted to give you a couple of resources to try to help you think about these procedures, right? One is this little document I had put together with a set of procedures for in-person learning. So if we're going back to that, probably the number one most important like the batarang for all of our utility belts, right? Our teacher Batman utility belts is some sort of a callback procedure. So when you release students to do their collaborative stuff and talk and be loud, you have a way to bring them back better than Google Meet does, right? So and so there's some ideas on how to do that in there. So there's that. Another really great idea that I've seen around is using visuals. This really helped in with distance learning, I think, is showing students what to do. So rather than just explaining it in camera, have a video or an image that shows how to do the thing, right? One thing that I can't imagine we're not going to be like one-to-one or nearly one-to-one in classrooms moving forward. I'm at the district office, but I'm not like at the district, like I don't make those decisions. But there's a lot of Chromebooks out there. What are we going to do with them? Might as well give them to students to use in classrooms, right? And whenever you have lots of something, like if you've ever had lots of crayons in your class, like what happens to the crayons, right? They end up somehow on the ceiling, right? And so with a procedure in place, the best one I've seen is something like this one on the screen here. Is you take a picture of what you want the Chromebook cart to look like, and then you post that picture on the thing. So if it's a cart, you put it on the cart, and point to make it look like this. So when you put it away, it should look like that. That screenshot is literally from one of the Chromebook carts at the PCC. So it was in disarray, and so my colleague Ben and I were like, oh, let's do this. Let's just put a picture of what it's supposed to look like on it, and and I think that's helped, right? The other image there is of a binder. So maybe during warm-up time, you project the warm-up on the screen and what your desk should look like, for different things. So maybe you're going to be taking notes, and you'll need your textbook, and you might even project the page on there or something like that. But just showing the students rather than saying, you say it, but you also show it, has been pretty effective. And so, oh, and it also works at home. Right, so just a pro tip there in case you need some assistance with that. Right. Some other routine procedures, and I've showed these before, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on there except for the first couple. The first one is this procedure potpourri document. All right, and so so this is taken from an old book I had seen, and I kind of adapted it. And so the idea here is that you can do this one of two ways. One is you write down all the procedures that you think would be necessary in class, right? And so I've listed them here. You can edit these to something else that's more suited to your classroom, but I just thought, okay, so entering the classroom, beginning the class period, what students do if they're returning from an absence, what to do with tardies, getting students' attention, things like that, right? So one approach is for you to script out what that should look like. Contrary to popular belief, kids don't come to school knowing how to do these things, right? They need instruction, right, on how to put these things together. And so I have found that if I script out what I want it to look like, it helps me communicate it to the students, right? Another way of using this, and I think a better way of using this, is to have the students co-create the procedures with you. So early in the year, during the first few days of school, give each student a copy of this digitally or on paper, however it'll work for you. And in a group, have them collaboratively come up with what entering the classroom would be. What is an appropriate way to enter the classroom, right? And some kids might be like, anytime at all, not wearing pants, or whatever. And you can say, no, it has to be appropriate, and just have that baseline. But having the students co-create these and then turn them in, and then you probably already have an idea of what you want, and chances are it's going to line up with what students think is appropriate. But then they have some buy-in because they were able to have a say in what the procedures are like, and then they're more likely to comply, I think. And so there's that. You can change the procedures if you want. On the presentation, there's also a hybrid version. And so there's this one, and so this how to do it online and how to do it in person in case that happens again. So you have that there. All right. All right. And that's pretty similar to the social contract activity, right, that you're probably familiar with. If you've gone through Capturing Kids' Hearts, they'll go through that. And so here's a ready-to-go social contract lesson. You can make little adjustments if you want, but it's ready to go for you. In fact, in the speaker notes down here are directions on how to do this virtually if you're going to end up doing it virtually, and then an idea on how to break up your groups. Rather than doing breakout rooms, if you're in person, right, you just do like table groups and things like that. And so, that's there for you, ready to go. And all right. All right, the other two are templates that other folks have come up with that I thought were pretty neat, and I've shared them at previous PDs, and so I'll leave them there for you if you want to take a look at them. This next thing I've shown before, but just kind of want to gloss over it really quick again. And what it is, it's the same concept, only students will take a picture of what it's supposed to look like also. So it combines the picture of this idea with the procedures idea. And so let's say you want students to be able to come up with a procedure for what it should look like during warm-ups, right? So then as a group, they would take a picture of themselves doing what it's supposed to look like. So during warm-ups, maybe should look like this. And so they take a picture and they submit that. They also take a picture of what it should not look like. So, there's some girls like doing their makeup and stuff, and another girl on her phone, right? And so there's a make it look like this, not like this. And then if you want to add some fun, like have them create a meme to emphasize the procedure, the rule. And then this is all done on a Google slide show, so then they can just turn it in on Google Classroom and you have a digital version of it. And what I love about this is that if you get a really good one, then you can print it or project it, right? And you can just say, okay, class, warm up time. Here's what it's supposed to look like, remember? And then, so the students are kind of doing the work for you in that sense while they're learning, right? So there's that one. One of the things that we really emphasized this year was keeping a really organized Google Classroom, and there are tons of PD on just setting up Google Classroom early in the year. They're in Ed Central, but that's another like the SEL thing. Like, why haven't we always done? Oh yeah, like it's just easy to find things on an LMS, whether you're using Google Classroom or Canvas. But having things clearly organized in a digital space is actually really helpful for teachers and students, right? And so there's that. A lot of my teachers were using and found it really helpful. So this is like this came about as a solution to a problem where it's supposed to look like a whiteboard, and a lot of teachers have the blue painter's tape on the whiteboard to divide up the section. So that's what this is, only it's digital. And then some of my teachers I've talked to that have been using this are like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna keep using it because I've got my nice big Promethean board now and a TV, so I could project it on the TV and have as students come in, the first thing they do, they have to look at the TV and do the warm up, and then it gives them the agenda, the objective, something encouraging. What are the materials I'm going to need today, so I can have those ready, and a timer to make sure I know when things are going to be ready. And so, so there's that. In the slideshow, you can make a copy of it and download it and adjust it. These are just text boxes with a white background, so you can adjust the size and to your heart's content. So there is that. All right, number 3 of 5. So we're coming down the wire here. So this idea of cloning yourself, right? So making copies of yourself. So often, I remember being in classrooms of like up to 40 students, right? And I'm working with one group here, and I'm like, man, I wish I had like 6 of me, so I could, they could be at different parts of the room at different times explaining, because by the end of a class period, I probably can't get to every group and explain the thing. And I think distance learning helped solve that problem, or at least make it a little more obvious to me, like a quick solution. And in the interest of time, I won't play this video, but it's there for you. Also published by Edutopia. The concept is this teacher did, or this group of teachers did that. So what would traditionally be their lecture. They recorded into little segments and had students in different stations working on different lessons. And so the concept's not new, right? It's like the flipped classroom model, right, where a lot of the instruction will happen independently, maybe at home or maybe in class, right? Because maybe students are just not going to do that homework at home. Well, have them do it in class then, and that but while they're doing that, work with this other group, and that sort of thing. So in the interest of time, we won't watch that, but it's there. It's about 6 minutes, and you can look at it. But here's some of the stats on, or some of the data on using videos, right? And so the first graph shows you that the student engagement with videos, right? And essentially, they're you want a shorter video, right, to have students be able to watch. So 0 to 3 minutes. So you want to ideally under 6 minutes is great. Beyond that, attention starts to go away, right? And then so that's on the student side, and then from the creating perspective, what some experts suggest is you spend equal amount of time planning and recording. So if you're going to record, a 5-minute video, those 5 minutes, or however long it takes for you to plan that, to do that recording, that's how much time you should spend planning on it, and then don't spend too much time enhancing and sharing, right? So just something to keep in mind. And by now, if you haven't had to stand in front of a camera and talk into a camera, like how'd you get away from it, this past year and a half, right? And so I think most of us, I wouldn't say we're comfortable in front of a camera or anything like that, but wouldn't go that far, but we're maybe more comfortable than we were a year and a half ago talking into a camera, and and so I would suggest let's leverage that, right? And so the link down here will take you to a podcast notes on it's a great podcast. Who doesn't love a good podcast, right? This one's about education. Cult of Pedagogy is what it's called, and anyway, she gives these ideas on how to use different streaming things. So this is early in the pandemic is when this was published, and so she talks about Screencast-O-Matic like it's this revolutionary new thing, right? And most of you have probably, you're like, oh yeah, we got this, or even Google Meet, I think, has made it easy where you can just open up a Google Meet with no one else around and just hit record, and you've got this, instant video, right? All right. Yeah, Pamela said that's why they don't watch instructional videos. Yeah, probably because they're too long. So, all right. Okay. All right, so next thing I want to kind of look at is some ideas on inclusivity. And, again, it's one of these things that has come out of the past year and a half that it's like, why haven't we always been conscious of this, right? Or as conscious of this as we have been. And so here are a couple of things. So before I show you this, one of the things about Google Meet that I think, there's a lot of like terrible things about Meet and Zoom and doing class this way. A nice silver lining in this has been how shy students have a voice, right? They don't even have to turn their camera on, but they have been able to communicate and express themselves through the chat, right? And a good chunk of students may not have felt that free in person. And so then the question then becomes, well, how do we get that into in person. If we're back full in person, how do we harness the chat, right? Well, there's a couple of ways actually, and these have been around for a while. I didn't know about them until recently. Yeah, the comment section in Google Assignments and Google Classroom and in Google Assignments. Yeah, those are great. And so there's this website called Back Channel Chat, and it's designed to be a chat room for live audiences. Right, and so you create it's a lot like Kahoot, where you create a code and then everyone who has that code can interact, and then they can send messages to each other or to you in this sort of back channel, and then the teacher can like record it and have a copy of a transcript of it or not, but it gives I think a voice to students who might not normally use their voice. And so yeah, that's this one. I think it's a like 1 minute, I don't know. So it's a 2-minute video, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You probably don't even need the video. You could go to backchannel.com, I think it is, backchannelchat.com, and play around with it yourself. So it's free. I think the free one is good enough, but there is a $15 a year version that lets you do a few more things, gives you a little more control. And if this is something that you're like, man, I'm really gonna miss the chat room, it might be worth an investment, right? For the $15 there. So there's that. A cheaper kind of more bootleggy version of this, but still useful, is there's this feature embedded in Google Slides. It doesn't get used a ton, but it's the Q&A feature. And so when you go to present a slide, one of the options is to use the Q&A. And so here, let me show you my presenter view tab. All right. So when I projected the slide that I was showing you, I did presenter view. I didn't do just presenter view, and this other little window pops up, right? And I can click on audience tools, and I can click start new, and now I'm going to go back to my presentation, and now there's this there's this unique URL on the top of all of my slides. So you as a participant can open up a new tab, go to that unique URL, and ask me questions or raise comments, like make comments and things like that. And that can be used at any time. So if you have a Google slide made, you can just use this, and students can jot down their thoughts and ask questions. And during the presentation, I can go back. Okay, share. All right, and if there were any questions, they would appear here, and I can address them. I can project them if I wanted to. All right, this video.
Here's how to enter.
All right, so it's a 2-minute video, and it'll walk you through the entire steps if you wanted to try to do that. All right, cool. Yeah, it's like a little hidden thing in Google Slides. I never really think about using it, especially because it's just more convenient to have the chat open than having a separate thing open for a chat. But in person, that can be a lot more useful. So something else that the program specialists put together here for us, there's this, if you click on the image, it will take you to a slide presentation. And when we talk about inclusivity, there's like the golden standard for that in education right now, I think, is UDL. It's this concept of universal design for learning, right? And our program specialists put together this really great resource with great ideas on how to incorporate UDL strategies in using the tools we already have, like Google Docs and Slides and Calendar, and a few things on Google Meet. So that's really useful. So really appreciate that they put that together. And so it's here for you to use if you and to explore if you have time. And then finally, let's talk about assessments. So reassessing the assessments, right? And so one of the things that came out of this, like the past year and a half for me, like a game-changing strategy for me, was this idea of a teach back. And with a number of the teachers that I work with, we were trying to come up with a way of doing a semester final at the end of first semester, and because kids were all over the place, well, physically and academically, right? And so, like, how can we measure what they actually know? And so we'd come up with this idea of a teach back. One of them, so they took an old study guide that I had for Julius Caesar, right? And it was like terms related to the play, and terms related to figurative language, and ideas on tragedy. And so that was my study guide for, I think it was a multiple choice test, actually, right? And what a study guide usually is a bunch of terms and then some blank space for you to write down your notes, right? So that concept is great in and of itself as an assessment, I think, right? And so what we did was we took a traditional study guide and then said to students, go ahead and open book, open internet, open whatever. You have 20 minutes to tell us everything you know about these things, right? And then so as they're doing this, we could check it in real time because it was assigned as make a copy for every student in Google Classroom, and so you can kind of check them in real time, make sure that they're going, in the right direction. After the 20 minutes, now it's Flipgrid time, and so the idea was the prompt for the Flipgrid was you have 45 seconds or a minute, depending on how generous you want to be, right? Pick the 5 most important terms and explain why those terms are the most important ones in this concept. And what we ended up finding was that a lot of the students were, that was deeper thinking, because they had to rationalize, they had to justify their choices, right? And so they had to go back and make sure their definitions were accurate and all that. Some folks gave the impression that there was a correct 5. You had to choose the correct 5. There really wasn't, and so that turned out to be a really great exam. That got you some real good data on whether or not students got the concepts or not. And it was quick to grade. 45-second thing videos, yeah, that's it can do that a lot faster than I could do 40 of those a lot faster than I could 40 essays, right? So that was really useful. And there's a template there for you to use if you want. And this other thing, like a teach it back to someone, right? Like the one I like to use is teach it back to 5-year-old Mr. Rebus, right? So explain this concept like you would to a 5-year-old, right? And I don't know who let me out of the house like that and then documented that, but there's 5-year-old Mr. Rebus there. And another version of this that I've seen is student teachers putting their own kids there, so get a cute picture of their kids and say like, oh hey, this is my son Johnny. How would you explain Greek tragedy to a 5-year-old? Like that sort of thing. Or a process, right? Like a math formula to a younger student. Oh, and the other one I had seen was sock puppets. So on the first day of school, this was a teacher actually also at an elementary school, but I would totally, I think this would translate into our secondary lives, right? But she had students make a puppet out of a paper bag, you know, like where you put your hand in and then it like talks, and create a story for them. So she taught them narrative by creating a story for the, you know, this character, but then they had to at different points in the semester explain concepts to that character. So based on the personality of that, you know, puppet, they had to try to explain it, you know, to that, or to a partner's sock puppet or bag puppet. So, you know, again, like the concept of show what you know, I think was really highlighted this last year because traditional tests weren't really working, right? They were hard to implement and maybe not so accurate, but these teach back concepts were really good. So there's another, I think I forgot to delete that slide, but it's the same as the previous one. And then this was a really great concept too. It's simple, like have a T-chart, list the things that either the student lists the things that they know and then they show you that they know it, or you give them a list of these are the things I expect you to know, right? Like a study guide. And then throughout the unit, students are supposed to show you that they know that concept. Works real well in math. You know, and there's a couple of ideas there. There's a link to 100 different things the students can do to be creative to show that they know something. And I also included a video there of my daughter doing that actually. So the assignment was explain diffusion. And I heard her talking to herself, you know, so I went and I was like, oh, she's in school. She's talking in school, right? And, you know, well, she was recording a Flipgrid, so I recorded it without her knowledge. So please don't tell her I did that. But you can watch it. It's super cute. All right, and then I think this is the last one here, is this concept of a map test, not to be confused with the NWEA, which is also called the map test. So this is not the map test, it's just a map test. So I learned this from a Shakespeare class. So don't like shut off, you know, you're like, I'm not going to do Shakespeare, right? No, but hear me out. So what the teacher ended up telling us, this is a class on teaching Shakespeare, right, to students. And so the way she runs her, oh, okay, I'll clear I'll open up the permissions on that. Sorry about that. So the concept behind this map test is that all the important characters and terms and definitions from the story or from whatever your content is, you have a list. In fact, you make little cards, so like index cards with that concept written out. So like in this case, let me show you what the list was. So fairies, right? Or Oberon, one of the characters in A Midsummer Night's Dream. That would be on a card. On the other side of the card, students would write down the things they know about that character. And then as a group, they would have to organize the cards visually, right? So they would have a big table, and then you organize them in a like some kind of thinking map or some kind of concept map, right? And so you could have a class of 40 students, you know, maybe 8 different groups, and each table has a different order, a different organization, but they can justify it, right? And so then the second half of the exam is, all right, now independently, so you independently explain your chart. And so they would take a picture of the chart and then write an explanation of why things are like that. And what what she had said, and I had done this too, that what you find is that even though you had groups create the chart, if you have 5 different people in that group, you have 5 different explanations of why it looks that way, but the students are still processing the information, right? And so so obviously there has to, social distancing would be kind of difficult with this, right? But you could do this digitally with digital cards on a Jamboard would probably work really well with this, where you could have little sticky notes for students to organize things, right? So so anyway, so there's this concept of a map test where students create the map and then explain the map based on the list of criteria that you've given your students, right? Oh, and then one more thing here, this concept of a single column rubric or single point rubric, I've heard it called also, that's really catching on, I think. The concept behind this is you take a traditional rubric and you remove everything except for the proficient column, right? So you take the proficiency of a column, the proficiency column in a rubric, and you put that in the center with 2 blank spaces on either side. And so the idea is the students can achieve the proficiency in a concept, in a task rather, by looking at that, and acts almost as a checklist. So the worst possible thing, if they follow everything there, the worst possible thing that you can get turned in is a something that is proficient, right? And if it's not yet proficient, there's room for either you to explain, specifically what needs to happen over on the left side, right? You can give details on what it is that students would need to improve to get to proficient, right? And then on the other side, there's this space for the students who, we've probably all had this. Some of you might be the student, right, where you're like, oh, Mr. Rivas, I see you gave me an A, but where's the plus, right? So that gives students a lot of freedom to go above and beyond what is merely proficient, right? So it's good for the student, for the teacher to assess for a couple of reasons. I think it's very specific, and it's easy to create. One of the things I always hated about making rubrics is that it takes a long time because I have to find these definitions of, and try to come up with a different version of what I want, but rather I can just create what I want and then give room for that. The other thing that Amanda, yeah, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's my next point, is that this is also good for students to self-assess, right? So, or to peer assess each other. So while they're looking at each other's papers or each other's project, they can look at this and look at the checklist. Did I meet these criteria? And maybe even critique each other's and say, oh, I don't think you met proficiency. Here's what you need. And so, yeah, it's really great time saver, I think, there. All right, and then these are just a few recycled things that I threw in here that I thought were pretty good, but I saw this a lot, just this idea of creating memes to show that you understand a concept. Here's one idea. There's the CNN 10 website where every day there's a 10-minute recap of news stories or vocabularies, news, and rap at the end of every week. There's a fun rap about the current events that happened over the past week, and the students can watch that and then create a meme in order to respond to a news event, right? So there was that. last thing I wanted to give you, also back from that podcast, because who doesn't love a good podcast for the summer, right? You can go back and listen to some of these, but some of these concepts I got from this lady who did this episode on post-pandemic teaching, and so some really good materials there and suggestions, and it's real fun to listen to. But wait, there's more, right? So I've been trying to compile all these things on a single document, and so I've got over 50 strategies. Some of the ones that are included here, and others just trying to put them together and organize them in one place. It's a perpetual work in progress, and so it keeps getting added to and things adjusted. And as people send me like an example, a success story, I'll kind of ask your permission, obviously, and then clip it and put it on there. And so anyway, feel free to use it. I work with a lot of beginning teachers. That's my my primary gig, and so things like this are really helpful for them. And so kind of trying to crowdsource the stuff wherever possible. I give credit to where credit is due. The vast majority of all this is not me. It's just other people's great ideas that I'm compiling on a piece of paper for my teachers to use. But I had this idea of compiling this thing, and if you find something useful in there, hey, go ahead, use it, and share an example with me so that I can share it with other teachers, or share it yourself, right? But anyway, so there is that. And with that, I have one more thing to do. I want to make sure that I get this right here. Oh, okay. All right. So here's a quick launch, right? Saw this quote somewhere this past year about teaching, and the book is not about teaching, but it was related to it, or it was the association was made, and this guy said, better is possible. It does not take genius. It takes diligence. It takes a moral clarity. It takes ingenuity, and above all, it takes a willingness to try. And we have all been trying real hard. And you hear the term the new normal. Like, what is the new normal going to be like? Is it going to be elbow bumping everyone? Whatever the new normal looks like, let's encouragement to make it a better normal, right? And I think we have this unique moment in education going into next year where we can create what normal will be like, and hopefully it'll be better than what was before. Not that it was terrible before, but there's always room for improvement, and we have this unique opportunity to make really great improvements, right? So I will put in the chat. And as I'm doing that, I want to say thanks so much. I'll stick around if you have any questions, and have a wonderful summer.